who joins us via Skype, and he finds himself in Durban. Ashwin, always great to chat. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I found it intriguing this week as we saw more and more coverage of marking 160 years of the arrival of indentured labourers, because the first people from India actually arrived in South Africa long before that, under Dutch colonial rule, as actual slaves in 1684. Is it important for us to make that differentiation?
I think it's absolutely important to make that differentiation, simply because identities are so loose in a country which apartheid and colonialism tried to fix. We get an idea that those slaves who first went to Cape Town took on different kinds of identities and intermarried, and the idea of they were the same when they arrived is quite ridiculous. And that's why it's important to make those differentiations, but to also learn the lessons from that. And so, Marcel, it's been a week of memory, but memory can either be a kind of dead weight, an anchor, if you want, or it can be a catapult, an idea about seeing what has happened over the 160 years. And there's always a tension, I think, amongst historians and even in the community, which way they want to think about this. And so, for me, the 160 years is an epic African tale which keeps wagging.
And part of that tale that you decided to tell, you wrote in the Daily Maverick just this week a piece entitled Memorializing Indian Indentured Labour, a Monumental African Tale That Keeps Wagging, as you've just said. And in it, you tell just one of what I assume are many stories of a family who got their start here in the late 1800s, and like many other indentured labourers, families found their way back to India after various other governmental movements at that time. But then finding that they didn't feel like they fitted in India, and then started their journey to try and come back to Africa, a place that they then called home. This, I would assume, is one of many similar stories of a journey through identity that generations that have come after that are still grappling with and are still needing to process.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about, if you go into the archives, it's replete with letters of families, for whatever reason, went back to India. And, would write letters saying, we're in a foreign country, India. Africa is our country. We need to come back. And if you dig deeper, why was this so? It's because, for example, for every 5 men, there would be 1 woman. And people married across caste lines. They tore asunder and reinvented themselves in many ways on African soil. And so that when they went back to India, there are cases where a man left his wife behind at the railway station because he couldn't go back to the village, because the village was still stuck in a caste system, and his wife and his marriage would not be recognized. And so that gives us an idea of how changes are wrought upon people. Yes, they're traditions and a spine that runs through people, but changes happen, and none more than the changes in food. People talk about curry and rice and associate that with Indian, but the South African cuisine changed fundamentally because people just didn't have those condiments. And an example of that as an African food with lineages back into India is the bunny chow, made in Africa, enjoyed by all South Africans, and exported from here to the rest of the world. And so that's how we need to think about this. If we're going to think about identity as tight-fitting clothes, then it actually mocks history, and it mocks those struggles of indentured labourers who wanted to become full South Africans. And so that's, for me, how you think about it. Maybe, and the constant changes that are taking place, the joy and the fun that people have with their identity. Marcel, if you came to what we call the top market in Durban a couple of years ago, it always advertised the hottest masala was called Mother-in-Law's Revenge. Well, if you go now to the top market, people have changed. They go, the hottest masala is the Gupta masala. It can take you from Durban to Dubai and back again without leaving your house. There's the hottest chili powder is called Inkanla, guaranteed to make you jump into the fire pool. So people are, even the names of masala and chili powder are changing all the time. And for want of a better word, 160 years later, we are mixed masala, Mississippi masala, if you want. And those who try and box us in to an identity as if things have stood still for 160 years are just, frankly, been stupid.
How important is it that the way we learn more about our histories is brought about in the right tone? Not so that it can divide you to say this is my history and my history alone, but this is part and parcel of who I am as a modern-day South African. Is the issue that in South Africa there is too much focus on that which differentiates us and not what brings us together? And in your piece in the Daily Maverick, you speak about the need for Indians to start associating themselves as African Indians or South African Indians or just South African, plain and simple.
Absolutely. I mean, this idea that the only box you can mark is something called Indian or even something called colored or white or African, is an apartheid construct. And somebody who came yesterday from India will mark the same box as somebody who's been here for 160 years. Yet if you go back to India, you will immediately be asked, what country do you come from? I always joke with my friends, it cost me 50,000 Rand to realize in 2001 that I wasn't an Indian. As soon as I arrived in Mumbai, I thought, let me fit in. And immediately, I was asked that horrible question, where do you come from? Which country do you come from? They knew I was a foreigner. So this is our history. It's an incredible history. And people need to think about how we're decolonizing our history. Then it takes a new form. And even museums and monuments need to reflect that the history was trespassed with all kinds of different impulses. And so this idea even of, forget Indianness, Zuluness. I mean, my God, Shaka was appointing white chiefs in the 1820s whose great-great-grandchildren are still in this neck of the woods, the Finns and the Duns, given this horrible identity colored. So in this special type of colonialism, if you want, in KwaZulu-Natal, there are so many impulses, there's so much crossovers, that to think that you can have some kind of pure history that is racial or ethnic is something that just can't be done. But people insist on it because identity and ethnicity has become so reflexive in our life. But the intellectual challenge, the historical challenge, the archival challenge is to show that this is in fact not true. That the crossovers between peoples in this country are so incredible that to try to separate them is an impossible task.
And we probably shouldn't, because that's what makes us interesting as a people. Thank you so much. Ashwin Desai is a sociology professor from the University of Johannesburg. We thank him for his time.